The morning shift at Luna Base started like any other day until the sensors began screaming. Commander Park Jin-woo was drinking his coffee when Lieutenant Kim Soo-min burst into the command center, her face pale with shock. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," she said, her voice shaking slightly as she pulled up the long-range scanner display. What appeared on the screen made Jin-woo's coffee cup freeze halfway to his lips. Dozens of massive ships hung in space at the edge of the solar system, their crystalline hulls reflecting starlight in ways that seemed to bend reality itself. Each vessel was easily 10 times larger than humanity's biggest warships. "How many?" Jin-woo asked quietly, setting down his cup with careful control. 43 confirmed contacts, sir. More are still arriving." Soo-min's fingers moved quickly across her controls. "The energy readings are off the charts. These ships are using technology we can barely detect, let alone understand." Within minutes, every human military installation in the solar system was buzzing with activity. On Mars base, Captain Yoon Min-ho watched the same sensor readings with growing dread. The alien fleet was larger than every human space force combined. On the asteroid mining stations, workers stopped their drilling to stare at emergency broadcasts showing the mysterious ships. Admiral Lee Dong-yoon arrived at Luna Base within hours, his shuttle breaking several speed records. The old military commander had fought in 3 different wars, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. As he walked into the command center, the weight of humanity's future pressed down on his shoulders. "Report," he ordered simply. "The alien fleet has been holding position for 6 hours, Jin-woo explained, pulling up tactical displays. "No aggressive movements, but they're clearly in a defensive formation. Whatever they want, they're not taking any chances." Before Lee could respond, the communications systems erupted with an incoming signal. The voice that came through the speakers was mechanical, cold, and completely alien. "Primitive species of the 3rd planet," the voice announced without any greeting. "You are now under the authority of the Vorthok Collective. We are a union of 12 advanced civilizations that have brought order to this galaxy for over 1,000 years." Everyone in the command center held their breath as the message continued. "Your species will submit to collective rule within 7 of your planetary rotations. You will cease all military activities and prepare for integration into our administrative system. Resistance will result in complete pacification of your world and the removal of your species." The transmission ended with the same abruptness with which it had begun, leaving the humans staring at each other in stunned silence. "Pacification," whispered Dr. Choi Min-jae, the base's xenobiology expert who had been studying the alien signals. "They're talking about wiping us out like we're insects." Admiral Lee stood motionless for several long moments, his experienced mind racing through possibilities. Every scenario seemed hopeless. The alien ships were bigger, more advanced, and clearly had weapons that could destroy Earth's cities in minutes. Conventional military thinking suggested immediate surrender might be the only way to save some portion of humanity. But Lee was not a conventional military thinker. "Lieutenant Kim," he said finally, his voice steady and calm. "Open a channel to the alien fleet." Sir Soo-min looked confused. "What should I tell them?" "Tell them we need time to consider our options." Lee's expression revealed nothing, but those who knew him well caught the slight emphasis he placed on the word consider. The response went out immediately, transmitted in the same frequencies the aliens had used. The message was polite, almost apologetic. "Respected Vorthok Collective, humanity requests additional time to properly evaluate your generous offer. We ask for patience as we coordinate our response across all human settlements." What the aliens heard was the expected reaction of a primitive species buying time out of fear and confusion. What they didn't understand was that Admiral Lee had just activated the most important 7 days in human history. The moment the transmission ended, Lee turned to his staff with a look that would have made veteran soldiers nervous. "Activate Protocol Omega," he ordered. "All stations, All commands, full implementation. Protocol Omega was theoretical until that moment. It was a contingency plan developed by human military strategists who had spent decades imagining first contact scenarios. While diplomats had hoped for peaceful meetings with alien visitors, the military had prepared for war. Within minutes, coded signals flashed across the solar system. On Mars, Captain Yoon Minho received orders that transformed his mining operation into something completely different. In the asteroid belt, Colonel Oh Hyun-woo began coordinating movements that would turn chunks of rock into weapons. On Earth itself, General Kim Taeyang started preparations that would make the planet's surface the least important battleground in the coming war. The Vorthok had made their first critical mistake. They had assumed that giving humans time to consider would lead to surrender. Instead, they had just handed their enemies the most valuable resource in warfare: preparation time. As the alien fleet maintained its position, confident in their overwhelming superiority, humanity began to prepare for a war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Vorthok watched humanity's response with satisfaction. Their advanced sensors detected exactly what they expected to see: panic, chaos, and desperate military movements around Earth's major population centers. Human ships raced between planets, carrying what appeared to be emergency supplies and reinforcements. Radio chatter filled with frightened voices, coordinating last-minute defensive preparations. High Admiral Zethkar of the Vorthok fleet studied the tactical displays with the confidence of someone who had conquered 17 different worlds. "Observe their primitive response patterns," he told his officers. "They are gathering their forces around their breeding centers, exactly as predicted. No strategic thinking, only emotional reactions." What the aliens couldn't see was happening 300 million kilometers away, deep in the asteroid belt, where Colonel Oh Hyun-woo ran the most important military operation in human history. "How are we looking on the deception broadcasts?" Oh asked his communication specialist, Major Kang Sora. "Perfect, sir. The fake emergency signals are being transmitted right on schedule. The aliens are intercepting exactly what we want them to intercept." Sora smiled grimly as she monitored multiple data streams. "They think our Mars garrison is requesting emergency evacuation procedures. They believe Earth's orbital defense platforms are operating at only 30% capacity due to equipment failures." The truth was very different. Every piece of information that Vorthok intercepted was carefully crafted by human intelligence experts. Dr. Choi Min-jae had spent the last 4 days analyzing every alien communication, building a psychological profile that revealed their tactical mindset. "They think like accountants," she explained to Admiral Lee during one of their planning sessions. "Everything is calculated, predictable, efficient. They've conquered other species by simply overwhelming them with superior technology. They expect us to respond logically to hopeless odds." But humans had never been particularly logical about warfare. Captain In-sung Woojin commanded the deception operation's most dangerous element. His converted mining ships hung motionless in Saturn's ring system, their hulls coated with materials that made them invisible to Vorthok sensors. Each ship had been transformed from an industrial vehicle into something much deadlier. "Remember, we stay completely silent until the signal," Song reminded his crew. "The aliens need to believe we're just space debris until we're ready to show them otherwise." Similar preparations were happening throughout the solar system. Commander On Gyeong positioned her forces near Mars, using the planet's magnetic field to hide their true numbers. What appeared to be a small, desperate defensive fleet was actually a carefully coordinated trap involving hundreds of vessels. The most sophisticated part of the deception involved Earth itself, while alien sensors detected frantic military movements around major cities. The real defensive preparations were happening in locations the Vorthok couldn't imagine. General Kim Taeyang had turned the planet's communication satellites into weapons, its weather monitoring systems into targeting arrays, and its deep space tracking networks into early warning systems. Status report from all sectors, Admiral Lee requested during the daily briefing on Day 5. Mining ship conversions are complete, reported Captain Yoon Minho, from Mars. We've got enough firepower hidden in the asteroid belt to surprise them, sir. Psychological warfare packages are ready for broadcast, added Dr. Park Yoon-hai, the fleet's specialist in alien behavior. We've identified specific fears for each of the 12 species in their collective. When we activate these programs, their unity will start falling apart. Gravity manipulation systems are online, announced Lieutenant Han Juan from the Jupiter monitoring station. We can redirect their own weapons back at them, using gravitational slings they won't see coming. But the most important preparation was happening in the minds of every human soldier, pilot, and commander. They were preparing to fight a war that broke every rule the aliens understood. Commander Bae Soo-yoon briefed her squadron of fighter pilots with words that would have terrified any rational military force. We're not fighting to survive this battle, she told them. We're fighting to win a war. Some of us won't make it home, but that's not the mission. The mission is to show these aliens that humans don't surrender, even when we should. The Vorthok continued monitoring human communications, growing more confident each day. They intercepted desperate messages between Earth's leaders, recorded panicked discussions about evacuation procedures, and detected what appeared to be increasingly desperate attempts to build defenses that everyone knew would be useless. On the 6th day, High Admiral Zethkar received a final communication from the human leadership. The message was exactly what he expected. A request for negotiations, an admission that humanity couldn't possibly resist the collective's power, and a plea for mercy in exchange for complete surrender. As anticipated, Zethkar told his officers, "Tomorrow, we will begin pacification procedures. This species has proven as predictable as all the others." What he didn't realize was that the message had been carefully crafted by human psychological warfare experts. Every word was designed to increase alien confidence while concealing the true nature of humanity's preparations. As night fell across the human settlements, soldiers checked weapons that weren't supposed to exist. Pilots reviewed tactics that had never been tested in space, and commanders finalized strategies that would have been considered impossible by any rational military doctrine. The Vorthok slept peacefully in their ships, confident that tomorrow would bring another easy victory for the collective. They had no idea they were about to face an enemy that had turned deception itself into an art form. The attack began at exactly 0600 Earth's Standard Time. High Admiral Zethkar ordered his fleet forward with the casual confidence of someone who had done this dozens of times before. The Vorthok ships moved in perfect formation toward Earth, their weapon systems charging for what should have been a simple demonstration of superior firepower. "Begin pacification protocol," Zethkar commanded. "Target their major population centers first. Make it quick and efficient." But the first surprise came immediately. The human ships that their sensors had been tracking around Earth suddenly vanished. Not destroyed, not retreating, simply gone from their instruments, as if they had never existed. "Report." Zethkar snapped at his sensor operator. "Sir, I'm reading massive interference. Something is jamming our detection systems, but the energy signatures don't match any known technology." What the Vorthok couldn't understand was that they were no longer fighting the battle they had planned. Captain Song Woojin watched from his hidden position in Saturn's rings as the alien fleet passed directly through his kill zone, completely unaware of the danger surrounding them. "All units, this is Ghost Leader," Song whispered into his communicator. "The fish are in the barrel. Execute Silent Thunder." The converted mining ships erupted from concealment like predators springing a trap. What had appeared to be empty space suddenly filled with missiles, energy beams, and kinetic projectiles fired from weapons the aliens couldn't detect until it was too late. 3 Vorthok ships exploded before their crews even realized they were under attack. Multiple contacts, all vectors, screamed the Vorthok tactical officer as human ships seemed to materialize from nowhere. How are they hiding from our sensors? But this was only the beginning, as the alien fleet tried to regroup and respond to the ambush. They found themselves flying directly into Commander Jeong's trap near Mars. "Welcome to the neighborhood," Han muttered as she watched the alien formation approach exactly where her calculations predicted they would. Fire Plan Alpha. The space around Mars erupted in coordinated chaos. Asteroids that had been quietly repositioned over the past week suddenly activated hidden thrusters, turning chunks of rock into guided missiles traveling at incredible speeds. The Vorthok ships, designed for battles against conventional fleets, had no defense against weapons that looked like natural debris until the moment of impact. Admiral Zethkar stared at his tactical displays in growing horror. His perfectly organized fleet was being torn apart by enemies that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. Every time his forces moved to engage what appeared to be human ships, they found themselves attacking empty space while real attacks came from completely different directions. "This is impossible," he said to his bridge crew. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. How are they doing this?" The answer came from General Kim Taeyang on Earth, who was orchestrating the battle like a master musician conducting a deadly symphony. Every human ship, every hidden weapon, every surprise attack was coordinated through communication systems the aliens couldn't detect or intercept. "Phase 2, Kim announced calmly. "Show them what 3,000 years of human warfare looks like." Captain Yoon Minho led the next wave of attacks with tactics that would have been considered insane by any rational military commander. His squadron flew directly at the largest Vorthok battleship, appearing to make a desperate suicide run. The aliens concentrated their firepower on what they thought was a final, hopeless human assault. At the last possible moment, Yoon's ships scattered in different directions, revealing that the real attack was coming from behind, while the Vorthok guns tracked the decoy ships. Lieutenant Han Juan's stealth bombers struck the battleship's unprotected rear sections. The massive alien vessel, pride of the Vorthok fleet, began breaking apart as its reactor systems failed. "They're not fighting like any species we've encountered," reported the Vorthok's military analyst, his voice filled with something approaching fear. "They're using their own ships as decoys. They're willing to sacrifice entire squadrons to achieve tactical advantages. This level of acceptable losses is ... unnatural." But what terrified the aliens most was the growing realization that humans weren't fighting desperately, they were fighting methodically. Every attack, every maneuver, every sacrifice was part of a larger strategy that the Vorthok couldn't predict or counter. Commander Bae Soo-yoon demonstrated this perfectly when she led her damaged fighter squadron in what appeared to be a retreat toward Jupiter. The Vorthok pursuit forces followed eagerly, believing they had finally cornered some human ships. Instead, they flew directly into a gravity trap that used Jupiter's massive gravitational field to redirect their own weapons back at their fleet. Vorthok missiles and energy beams curved through space in impossible trajectories, striking alien ships that thought they were safely out of range. "Impossible," Zethkar shouted as he watched his own weapons destroying his own forces. "How are they controlling gravitational fields?" Dr. Choi Min-jae, monitoring alien communications from her hidden station, smiled grimly as she listened to their growing panic. The psychological warfare was working perfectly. The Vorthok had expected to fight a primitive species using superior technology. Instead, they were facing an enemy that treated war itself as a science, and humans had been studying that science longer than any other species in the galaxy. As the battle continued, alien formation discipline began to collapse. Ships broke from their assigned positions, commanders contradicted each other's orders, and the perfect unity of the Vorthok collective started to fracture under pressure they had never experienced before. The real war was just beginning. The Vorthok fleet was falling apart. High Admiral Zethkar stared at his command, displays in disbelief as ship after ship reported damage, confusion, and something he had never encountered in 40 years of conquest: genuine fear. "Sir, the squadron is requesting permission to withdraw," reported his communication officer. "Their commander says his pilots are refusing to engage the human fighters." Refusing? Zethkar couldn't believe what he was hearing. The Nexhari were one of the most disciplined military species in the collective. They had never retreated from any battle. The reason for their fear was currently demonstrating the most disturbing aspect of human warfare. Captain Bei Suyun lead her fighter squadron in an attack that defied every rule of military logic. Her pilots flew damaged ships directly into enemy formations, using their own vessels as weapons when their guns ran out of ammunition. "Ghost Squadron, this is Sword Leader," Bei announced calmly over the radio. "My engines are gone, but I've got a clear shot at their command ship. Going in." Her fighter, streaming atmosphere from multiple hull breaches, accelerated directly toward the largest Vorthok vessel. At the last second, she ejected, letting her ship crash into the alien bridge. While she was picked up by another human pilot, the Vorthok crew watched in horror as their commander's ship exploded from an attack that had cost the humans nothing. They weren't already going to lose. "They fight as if they're already dead," whispered a Zelthari gunner, his voice shaking. "How do you defeat an enemy that doesn't fear death?" Colonel Lim Sung-hoon was answering that question from his psychological warfare station hidden in the asteroid belt. His team had studied each of the 12 species in the Vorthok collective, identifying their deepest fears and cultural weaknesses. "Activate Program Fear," he ordered his specialists. "Target each species separately." Suddenly, Vorthok communication channels filled with specially designed transmissions. The Nexhari heard sounds that triggered their species' ancient terror of hive predators. The Zelthari saw visual patterns that activated genetic memories of planetary disasters. Each alien race found themselves facing psychological attacks tailored specifically to their biology. Dr. Park Yoon-hee monitored the alien responses with scientific fascination. "It's working perfectly," she reported. "The different species are starting to blame each other for the battle losses. Their unity is cracking." But the most devastating realization for the aliens came when they understood that humans weren't even using their most advanced technology. Lieutenant Han Ji-won demonstrated this when her squadron destroyed 3 Vorthok battleships using nothing but converted cargo containers and basic physics. "How are cargo containers penetrating our shields?" demanded the Vorthok fleet engineer. "They're not trying to penetrate," Han explained to her own crew as they watched the alien ships break apart. "They're using the containers to deliver localized electromagnetic pulses at exactly the right frequency to disrupt their power systems. Then their own shields collapse from the inside." Major Kong Sora coordinated the next phase of psychological warfare from her position near Jupiter. Her broadcasts weren't just random fear triggers. They were carefully designed to make each alien species distrust the others. "Attention Vorthok fleet," her message began, speaking in perfect Nexhari dialect. "This is a private communication to Nexhari forces only. The human resistance is stronger than the collective leadership told you. The Zelthari command staff are planning to use your ships as expendable shields while they retreat." Similar messages went out in 11 other languages, each one designed to increase paranoia and break down military cooperation. The psychological campaign worked better than anyone had hoped. Within hours, different species within the Vorthok fleet were arguing over tactics, questioning each other's loyalty, and making military decisions based on fear rather than strategy. Admiral Lee Dong-yoon watched the alien fleet's growing chaos from his command center and recognized the moment when psychological warfare transforms into military victory. "They're starting to fight each other instead of us," he observed. "Time for Phase 3. Captain Song Woojin received his orders with grim satisfaction. All units, this is Ghost Leader. The aliens are confused and scattered. Begin Hunter Protocol. Hunter Protocol was the most uniquely human tactical doctrine in their arsenal. Instead of engaging the alien fleet in massive battles, human forces split into small groups that hunted individual enemy ships like pack predators. Commander Oh Hyunwoo led his team in an attack on a lone Vorthok cruiser that had separated from the main fleet. But instead of simply destroying it, they disabled its engines and weapons, then began broadcasting the crew's panicked communications to the rest of the alien fleet. "Help us," screamed the trapped Vorthok commander. "The humans aren't trying to kill us quickly. They're playing with us like predators toying with prey." This was exactly the message the humans wanted to send. Every alien species had evolved as prey animals at some point in their history. The broadcasts awakened genetic memories that had been buried for millions of years. Dr. Choi Min-jae monitored the alien psychological profiles and smiled coldly. "Fear is spreading through their fleet faster than any weapon could," she reported. "They're starting to see us not as primitive enemies, but as something much worse, natural predators that enjoy the hunt." The Vorthok Collective had conquered dozens of worlds using superior technology and overwhelming force, but they had never faced an enemy that understood warfare as both science and art, and treated every battle as an opportunity to study new ways of breaking their opponent's will to fight. The aliens were learning that humans didn't just wage war, they had evolved for it. The Vorthok Collective was collapsing. High Admiral Zethkar sat in his damaged command chair, watching his fleet tear itself apart through a combination of human attacks and their own growing panic. Ships from different alien species were now firing on each other, convinced that their allies were secretly working with the humans. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Zelthari battle group," reported his tactical officer. "The Nexhari fleet is requesting immediate evacuation to their home systems. The Corvani ships are, sir, the Corvani are surrendering individually to human forces." Zethkar couldn't comprehend what was happening. In 3 days, a primitive species had destroyed the most powerful military alliance in the galaxy without even revealing their full capabilities. Admiral Lee Dong-yoon studied the tactical displays from his command center with the calm expression of someone who had planned every detail of this moment. The aliens were exactly where he wanted them, broken, scared, and completely unable to predict what humans would do next. "Begin final protocol," he ordered quietly. Major Sim Johan received his orders with a mixture of excitement and terror. His mission was either brilliant or completely insane, and he wasn't sure which. "All units, this is Hammer Leader. We're going hunting for the biggest fish in the pond." His small squadron of fighters accelerated directly toward the Vorthok command ship, flying in what appeared to be a desperate suicide attack. Every alien weapon system locked onto his ships, concentrating massive firepower on what looked like humanity's final hopeless assault. Zethkar watched the approaching human fighters with grim satisfaction. "At least we can destroy some of them before this ends," he told his crew. "All batteries, focus fire on those ships." But at the last possible moment, Sim's squadron scattered in 12 different directions, revealing that the attack had been a diversion, while every alien gun tracked the decoy fighters. Commander Ru Mingyu's stealth ships materialized directly alongside 3 key Vorthok vessels. The aliens found themselves looking down the barrels of human weapons at point-blank range, with boarding teams already cutting through their hull armor. "This is Commander Ru of the Human Defense Force," came the transmission on all Vorthok frequencies. "Your fleet commanders are now our prisoners. Your weapon systems are under human control. Any ship that fires on us will be destroyed by your own command vessels." The psychological impact was devastating. The aliens watched in horror as their own flagship's weapons turned to target the rest of their fleet. The humans hadn't just defeated them, they had captured their leadership and turned their most powerful ships into weapons against their own forces. Dr. Choi Min-jae monitored the alien communications from her hidden station and marveled at the complete breakdown of Vorthok military discipline. "They're in total panic," she reported. "Different species are abandoning the collective authority and trying to negotiate separate surrenders." Captain Yoon Min-ho demonstrated the final element of human tactical superiority when he established communication with the scattered alien fleet. His message was simple, direct, and terrifying in its casual confidence. "Attention all Vorthok forces," he announced. "This war is over. You can surrender now and return to your home worlds with the information that humans prefer diplomatic solutions to military ones. Or you can continue fighting and learn what happens when we stop being polite." To prove his point, Lieutenant Han Ji-won's squadron demonstrated a weapon system that made the aliens' blood freeze. They disabled a Vorthok battleship's shields, weapons, and engines without damaging the crew compartments, then sent the ship drifting helplessly through space as a warning to others. "How are they doing that?" whispered an ex-Hari commander. "They're controlling our technology better than we are." The answer came from Colonel Oh Hyun-woo, who had spent the entire battle analyzing alien systems and finding ways to turn them against their owners. "Every piece of technology has weaknesses," he explained to his engineering team. "The aliens built these ships to fight enemies who use similar technology. They never imagined facing an enemy that would hack their systems instead of trying to overpower them." High Admiral Zethkar realized that he was facing a choice that would determine the future of 12 different species. He could continue fighting and watch his fleet destroy itself, or he could accept that humans had demonstrated something no other species had ever achieved: complete tactical superiority without technological advantage. "Open a channel to the human leadership," he ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. Admiral Lee Dong-yoon accepted the communication with the same calm expression he had maintained throughout the entire battle. "Admiral Zechka," he said politely, "I trust you're ready to discuss reasonable terms for ending this conflict." We surrender," Zethkar said, the words feeling alien in his mouth. "But I must ask, how did a primitive species defeat the greatest military alliance in galactic history?" Lee's slight smile was more frightening than any weapon the aliens had encountered. "You made the same mistake that dozens of human civilizations made throughout our history. You assumed that superior technology guarantees military victory. Humans learned thousands of years ago that wars are won by superior strategy, not superior weapons." Within hours, the surrender was complete. The surviving Vorthok ships began their long journey back to their home systems, carrying news that would transform galactic politics forever. Captain Song Woo-jin watched the alien fleet retreat and understood that humanity had just become the most feared military power in the galaxy. "What happens now?" he asked Admiral Lee. "Now," Lee replied, "we prepare for the real challenge. Every species in the galaxy is going to want to either ally with us or destroy us before we become too powerful. The war for survival is over. The war for galactic influence is just beginning."